Homosexuality is part of Black African heritage. Africa, with such a rich and diverse culture, values, and social way of life, has always enjoyed immense diversity and dignity to sexual orientation. But a lot of useful history on homosexual love in pre-colonial Africa has probably been lost for good. It is not surprising, though. Pre-colonial Africa was to a big extent illiterate with no written records. And in today's wider modern Africa, the reading culture is relatively low in many countries. Important information in Black Africa has always been passed on from one generation to another orally. There are challenges to this, though, as some of the information is either distorted or lost for good. Most of the writing on pre-colonial Africa is attributed to early colonizers. For Uganda's case, early Christian missionaries established the first printing machines, giving rise to literacy and formal education. But Europe's first contact with Ugandan culture was also filled with their interest to kill homosexuality and the established way of life, which was considered backward. This is perhaps not surprising, given that in the 18th century, much of Europe that colonized Africa was busy suppressing homosexuality back home, exporting its legalized homophobia to same-sex groups in African countries through the development of laws that outlawed African practices. Many gay-loving people, like Buganda's historical king, Danera Basamora, Ekire Mwanga II, widely known as Kabaka Mwanga, have been demonized in European historical books, fueling homophobia among African gay communities, right into post-colonial societies and social, legal, and policy regimes. However, knowledge of some examples of gay love did survive in Africa and in Uganda. We know of the marriage tradition among Azande warriors population, which spread over Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Central African Republic. We also know of the gay sex customs at the court of the Kabaka, the king of Buganda.
It was among the high classes. So what you have to do, as the prince said, so long as it is kept, they don't do it in the open. They do it, they can do it. This homosexuality. That in Paris, Mwanga was very famous for his homosexuality. Mwanga saw his father die, and his father died of syphilis. It was a very big pain. So he feared women, because when he saw his father, he feared women. So that's why he indulged in homosexuality. So this homosexuality was mostly in the palace.
But then, why do campaigners against homosexuality in Uganda, like in many parts of the world, especially in Africa, advance the argument that it is not African, but rather a Western imposed practice with no African reference to the practice of homosexuality?
Sexual diversity it was there even before we were born, because in the Chiga language, there is what we call ebitingwa, which stands for homosexuals. A people's culture is expressed in their language, and whatever happens in the communities is named to refer to certain things that happen or certain behaviors that occur in society. By the time people named homosexuals ebitingwa, they had seen some people who were actually homosexuals in that community.
My name is Alex Nkabahona, senior lecturer in the Department of Religion and Peace Studies. I've been involved in a one-year nationwide research on attitude and knowledge about homosexual rights claims in Uganda. This is a study conducted by independent academic researchers from the department, and it was provoked by two factors or three. One, the rumor or the claim that there is deliberate recruitment of young people into the homosexuality practices. And the rumor is such that we didn't know exactly if it is true or not. If it is true, we wanted to find out who is doing it and for what reason. If it is not true, why is there such a claim? The second factor was the 2009 Anti-Homosexuality Bill, which was tabled to the 8th Parliament by Honorable Bahati. which bill has raised a lot of controversies and debates in the country, almost tearing the country into two camps. One camp of the human rights activists who say lesbians, gays, and transgender persons are human beings like anybody else, therefore they should be given opportunity to exercise their rights like anybody else. Then we have, on the other side, the special religious leaders and cultural leaders, and generally the society at large, saying homosexuality is anti-African, is anti-religion, and we shall not accept any practice like that in our country. So again, we want to find out to what extent do people actually understand the content of the bill and what they would say about some of the controversial clauses in the bill. For example, propose that if you are found guilty of homosexual practices, you should be hanged or killed. We want to find out what people would say on this subject. We have conducted it in 20 sample districts of Uganda. We have now actually concluded this field research, and we are now compiling and trying to analyze the information about this subject of homosexuality. There are two versions to it. One, there are people, majority of the people I've talked to say homosexuality did not exist. It is just an imported practice from the Western world. But when you try to probe further, to ask, for example, what is not African about homosexuality, then you begin to get contradictory responses. They only keep talking about cultural values, religious values that contradict the practice of homosexuality. Then there is the other side, and a few of them who said, yeah, homosexuality was here, only that it has not been openly talked about. Just like the subject of sexuality is almost a taboo, even for family people to talk about it. So our gauge on this is that homosexuality could actually have been here. It's not actually probably a Western practice. Because among our target groups, we talk to actually the practitioners, the gays, the lesbians, the transgender, the intersex person, and so on. And from what we have gauged in our interaction with them, it would seem there are 2 or 3 categories of people who practice homosexuality. There are those who claim that they are actually born like that. That's why they call it sexual orientation. They are sexually, emotionally, psychologically oriented to the same sex. That's one category, and they are there. We also got categories of cases of heterosexuals, married couples, who also engage in same-sex relationships outside their marriages. And it would seem these are persons who, I think, would belong to that category, who claim that they are born like that, but because of societal stigma, they actually go ahead and marry. But knowing deep knowing that they are actually attracted to the same sex. When people were saying that homosexuality is a Western thing, then we're challenging them. What about these words that we have in our local languages? Exactly, they were just saying, well, languages just develop. I mean, a practice comes and people coin certain words to address a situation, but on the whole, they would say it has nothing to do with the fact that it actually existed before this even word, Timwa or Kuryevsiyaga came. They would say this is just a new development trying to address a situation that has come, and they give it a name, but without a claim that it has actually a root going far many years back into history. I think we can trace existence of homosexual practices in Africa, pre-colonial Africa. Given the fact that these persons we have talked to who claim that they are born like that, I am tending to think that